Hello everyone, welcome back. This is the 10th video in the Meteor Galaxy tutorial series, and in this video we're going to finish the game, so let's get right into it. So in this video there are going to be a lot of various little things to do to wrap up the game, as well as a few things to polish it. So the first one that I'm going to address, and you might remember from the last video we kind of left off with an issue where if you collided with a meteor, you could still fly around, and so the way that I'm going to do that is add a new variable. So I'll go to the top here, and the new variable is going to be called game over, and that will be equal to false, and then we also want to initialize it to false, or initialize it to false here, and then we want to set it to false at the beginning of the game function right here. So with this, we need to set it to true when the game is ended, and we know that the game is ended when we collide with a meteor. So inside of the move ship function, I'm going to add it right here. So we're going to set game over to true. And one thing I forgot to put in the last video is this little break. It's not a huge deal to not have it. It just means that once you find a meteor that's colliding with the spaceship, you can break out of the loop, so it gives you just a slight bit more of efficiency, but not a huge difference. But anyways, right here we'll set game over to true once we've collided with a meteor. And then to stop moving the ship, I'm going to check right here if game over is true. And then if it is true, I'm going to return. So return is kind of the way I'm using it right here is kind of like the way that you use break in a while loop or for loop, kind of like I did down there. Return will just prevent anything below it from running, and right now we're just returning nothing since this function isn't expected to have a return value. All right. So the next thing that we need to do is add some more states to the game. So if you remember the object that we had that we were using like an enumeration, a few more states that we need to add have to do with the game over phase of the game. So we're going to want to have kind of a game over timer. So we don't want to immediately end the game when you crash into a meteor, because it's kind of nice to be able to actually see the animation of the meteor exploding that you crash into, so that it's not like what just happened, it's the game over screen shows up and you don't really see what caused that. So it's good to have a little bit of delay before you go directly to the game over screen, just so that it's obvious to the player what happened in the game. So back up to the top here, we're going to find the map that we made, or object that holds the game states. So right here, so the first one I'm going to add is init game over, and then I'll just set that to 5, and then there's going to be run game over, and I'll set that to 6, and game over timer, and I'll set that to 7. So and then back down to where we add the game states, I'll add a few more cases right here. All right, so inside of the game over timer, we just need to have some way to keep track of time. So I'm going to add another variable right here called game over timer. I'll initialize that to 0. And then down here, inside of game over timer, we're just going to add a game over timer every time that it runs right here. And most of the time we call other methods or functions inside of the cases, but for this one, since it's so simple, I'm just going to put it directly inside of the switch statement. So game over timer plus plus, so each frame it's run will add 1. And then inside of here, I'm going to add an if statement. So if game over timer is greater than or equal to 60, I just found having it play 60 frames of game over animation works pretty well. Then what we want to do is advance to the next state. So game state is going to then be equal to state dot init game over. Just And then I'm also gonna set game over timer to 0 so that's ready for the next time. All right, so then the next thing that we need to do is actually set the game to the game over timer state once we collide with the meteor. So down at the move ship function again, I'll just add another. We're going to set game state right here to the game over timer state. All right, so now that will run once we collide with the meteor. And the other thing that we needed to add, I forgot to do this earlier, to game over timer is we need to run the game. So I'm going to add run game right here. So the reason is we want to have all the animations keep playing, and so we need to continue running the game during the game over timer, and then after the game over timer we'll stop running the game inside of the init game intro. Now, so that we can test the functions and things that we just wrote, I'm going to add another function right here called init game over. And this is just the one that's going to be called inside of the main like game loop thing, the switch function there with game states. And I'm just going to call clear all right here. So clear everything away from the canvas, and then we'll do all the initialization stuff in here, but I'm going to, for now, just add game state equals state dot and then run game over. All right, and then I'll add the init game over function to the switch at the top, or the game manager, that's what we called it, and then I'll put that inside of there. So now we'll actually have something to test, because we'll know if it works if it removes everything from the screen after a certain amount of time. So I'll go ahead and run this so that we can make sure everything's working, and find a meteor. And then, well, it worked because it was calling that. And actually, I said the wrong thing. It's actually supposed to be remove all, not clear all. This should be remove all. So if we run that again, find a meteor to crash into. It's kind of the opposite of what you normally do. There, everything got removed. I find it funny that I have to try to run into meteors to test the game. It's all a part of the process of developing a game, though. All right, so now that we know that that works, we're going to need to add in a few more resources for the game over screen. So that's kind of the next thing that we're going to work on. And so, of course, as usual, I have the sprites that I created. You can find the URLs for those in the GitHub, or make your own. That's always welcome too, and I encourage that too. It's cool to make it your own, but it's also fine to use the sprites that I made too. So I'll go ahead and add those in quickly. All right, so I just added the play again button, and then the game over icon thing, or title for the game over page. So now back to the game over function, or init game over. We're going to need to set up a few things. So we want to add those new resources to the screen. First, I'm going to use the set position centered function right here. So set position centered. And then I'll set the position of the title of the game over screen. So object map dot game over is going to be the object that we're setting the position of, and then for we want it to set it to the center of the screen, so that'll be get width divided by 2, and then for the height I'll set it to 100, and then we can add the game over title to the screen. So object map dot game over, we'll add that to there. The next thing that we need to add is the button, so it'll look really similar. So set position centered, and then we're gonna do object map dot play again button, and then also center it on the screen on the y-axis. So get width divided by 2, and then for the position, I'm gonna do get height minus 70. And then also add that to the screen. So add object object map dot play again button. The play again button needs a bit more initialization since we want to be able to click it. So I'm going to use the function that we made earlier in the series. So add clickable object. And then the two parameters it takes in are the object that we want to make clickable. So that will be object map.playAgain button. And then we need the callback function. And so I'm also going to use another anonymous function. And so inside of here, we're going to need to do two things. We're going to need to start a new game. So we're going to set the game state to a init game. So that will start the game. And then we also need to clear the clickable objects. So I'm going to call clear clickable objects. So these two functions will get run right after we click the button. And I just put them in one line, but it's the same as having the function just like this. It runs the same way, but I just put it in one line for convenience. All right, so now let's try running this and just seeing if it works. So find a meteor to collide with. There's one. And we got the game over screen. So if we click this, I made a little mistake here. This should be state.initGame since we're accessing an element that's inside of an object. So now if we run the code again and crash into a meteor, so fly around until we find one. There. We got the game over screen, and if we click play again, you can see it resets the game, and we can fly around again and launch laser beams and play the game again. So that's cool. The next thing that we need to do is add a score to the game, since it's pretty important to tell how well you did. So I'm going to add another variable called score right here, and score will be equal to 0 to begin with. And we also want to initialize that inside of the init game function right here. So we'll set score to 0. And then every time that a meteor explodes, we know that, or the laser beam collides with the meteor and explodes, we add 1 to the score. So that's going to be how we score the game. So if we go down to where we have the laser beams, so move laser beams, if we collide with the meteors, then we need to increase the score by 1. So score plus plus. And there's another little thing that we can do to make the game a little bit more efficient, and that's just add a break right here, since we know that the laser beam has already collided with the meteor. Since we're checking all the meteors with each laser beam, so we don't have to start. We don't have to keep checking all the meteors after we've already found a meteor that's colliding with the laser beam. So another little efficiency thing right there. All right. The next thing that we need to do is actually draw the score on the screen so that it's so that the player can actually see their score, because right now it's just stored in a variable, so it's not very helpful. So if we go down to or go to run game right here, I'm going to add another function, and it's going to be called draw score. And I'll just write it right here. So function draw score. And so since we are adding things and removing things a lot from the game, we actually want to add and remove the text object each frame of the game. And I'm doing it at the end just to make sure that it's actually on top of everything. Otherwise, when you like add more meteors to the screen, it might go on top of the score, and then but we don't want that to happen, since it's more of like a graphics user interface element on the screen, so it should be on top of everything. To draw the score, we're going to add a new text object to the screen. So I'll do it right by the score. So it's going to be variable score text equals new text. and actually I'll make this lowercase, and inside of here, I'm just going to give it an empty string to start out with. We also need to give score text a font, and so you pass this in as a string. So I'm going to have it be 25 point Arial. All right, and so now that we have the score text, we want to add it to the screen. So I'm going to do that inside of draw score. So actually, we're going to remove score text from the screen on each frame, and then add score text. And then we also want to set this, update the text that score text is showing. So we're gonna use score text dot and then set text function, and then it's gonna be score and then plus and then score. And you want to leave that little space right here so that there's a space on the text. And we also need to set the position. So score text dot set position, and then I'm gonna set it to 1010, so it's just kind of in the top left corner. So if I run that, see, we also need to set the color. I'm gonna set it to red. So that we can see it clearly. And it looks like that's not far enough down, so I'll change this to 25. And actually, 25 wasn't enough. I'll set it to 30. Sometimes when you're doing these things with like a graphics interface, you just have to do some trial and error to get everything positioned correctly. All right, so now you can see if we fire the laser beams, it adds to the score if they run into a meteor, and then the meteor explodes. So that's a good progress right there. We have a score, so now the player can tell like how they're actually doing in the game. The next thing that we need to do is display that score on the game over screen so that they can see like what their final score is. So to do this, we're going to need to add another text object. So I'll just grab some of this code right here just so that we can keep it simple, be able to just modify that as a starting place. And so let's see, we got the init game over function. So init game over there. We need to create the new text object. So I'm going to do it right here. So variable text equals new text. And I'll just actually set the text right here. So it'll be score and then plus score. And then I'll remove the remove function right there since we don't need that. And we do want to set the color to red, and we just need to change the position. To change the position, we're going to use the set position centered function instead of this one. So set position centered, and then we're going to give it the text, and then for the x, it's going to be get width. Like the other things, it's going to be centered, or get width divided by 2. And then 250 I found works well for the y position. And then we do want to also change the score text to text, since that's the name of this object. We also want to add the font to this, so pass in a string, and I'm going to use 40 point Arial. All right, so now this should display the final score on the screen. So if we crash into a meteor, you can see it says score of 0, but now let's try testing it with a different number. So let's see, we got 3. Now we got a score of 3. All right, that's cool. One thing you probably noticed is when you crash into a meteor, the camera just keeps drifting at the same rate that the spaceship was going. And so to get rid of that, inside of this if statement right here, we can just set the last scroll x to 0, or the last scroll x to the current scroll X, and then the last scroll Y, scroll X, scroll Y, to the current scroll Y. And what this is doing is, if you remember, we're all over the code, we check for the difference in last scroll X and scroll X to see how far we need to move. And so if you set them equal to each other, there's no difference, and so you're not going to move. So if you go and then crash into a meteor, you can see it just freezes. And that's fine to do it that way. And that's definitely a valid way of doing it. But I'm going to show you a quick little technique that you can do to add some simple screen shake, since it adds kind of a cool animation to the game. All you need to do is add to the value right here. I'm going to set to randomizer dot next float, and then I will be between -10 and 10, and then I'm going to copy and paste this for the Y. And so it's just picking a random value and moving the camera around a little bit based on that. So if we run this again and then take a look at what that does, I'll fly into this meteor right here. You can see the camera kind of shakes around. So I think that's kind of a neat little effect that you can put in if you'd like. Another thing that you'll want to do is add some way of telling the person who's playing the game like how the instructions for playing the game, since it might just be a little bit confusing, like how do I fly around, or what am I supposed to do. And a really simple way that you can do this is to do it right here. So just inside of this little console. So I'm going to add a new function right here, and this is going to be called function print instructions. And then inside of here, we just need to add a few print statements to print out the instructions for the game. So I'll add the objective. So objective is going to be defend the galaxy from meteors. So defend. And then the next thing that we want to add is the controls. So I'm going to add kind of a little header right here. So controls like that, and then we just need to add some more print statements for the different controls. This should be print line. All right, and then so now that I have the instructions right here, I'm going to call print instructions just right here. Or actually, I'll just do it right before we call the set timer, since we just want this to get printed out once. So at the beginning, you can see it says objective, defend galaxy from meteors, controls, arrow keys to move, and spacebar to fire laser beams. So actually, I'll fix the order right there. Spacebar to fire laser beams. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add just an empty print line right here, just so that it makes a little space to make it a little bit more obvious where the controls are. So now we got the objective and then controls. Cool, so now the player has some idea of what they're supposed to do in the game. The last thing that I'm going to do is on the set size, I'm just going to uncomment this one, and then we're going to set it to the big size right here, since it'll be a bit nicer to have it a bit bigger screen for the like if you were to share the game or something like that. All right, let's take a look at how the game looks. Here it is. Let's run the game. You got the nice intro on the title screen and all the graphics loaded in like they should. So if we hit play, we can fly around. We can launch laser beams. The meteors explode. And when they explode, they add to the score. You can crash into them and come to the game over screen. And then also, let's see if we can make it to the edge of the world. If we make it to the edge of the world, we can fly into it, and it launches us back into the game world like it should. And then when we go to the end screen, it has the final score, so that the player can see how well they did on the game. So there you go. You have a completed game that you can now share with your family and friends and show them the cool game that you finished. Even though we have completed the game, there's still a lot more that can be added. So maybe you could add lives, or maybe you could have the game get a little bit harder as you go by adding more meteors. Maybe you get ambitious and you want to have a way that you can like unlock new ships and stuff. Like that would be really cool. But one idea that crossed my mind is something that you could add is having some sort of force field to the spaceship. So like kind of a little energy shield thing. And so I've created a couple of sprites here, and they'll be on the GitHub and the comment in the code. So I've got the green shield and the blue shield right here. And so I want to give these things to you as kind of a starting point if you'd like to use them as something that you can add to the game to practice your skills and put the things that you learned to the practice. Of course, you don't have to do these, but I think it's a cool thing to do. Or you could add some other feature that you have in mind that's different, or you could even make your own project from scratch with the things you learned. But I just encourage you to keep on programming, keep learning. We can all learn new things. I learn new things because there's always something that you can find to improve on to really keep on growing in the programming skills. All right, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Congratulations on making it through the whole series. Virtual high five. I hope you really enjoyed it. I enjoyed putting this together, and I learned a lot from doing it with editing videos and recording videos and things. So yeah, I had a lot of fun putting this together. So if you enjoyed it, share it with your friends. Maybe they could learn how to program too. But I encourage you all to just keep on programming. I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.